Welcome to Cloud on Air, live webinars from Google Cloud. We host webinars every Tuesday. My name is Tom McGrath, and I'm joined by Feng Liu, a software engineer from the Cloud Composer team. And today we'll be talking about Cloud Composer and how it orchestrates containers, and even more. You can ask questions anytime on the platform, and we have Googlers on standby to answer them. Let's get started. So our agenda today, we'll be looking at an overview of Cloud Composer and Apache Airflow. We'll look at how to use Cloud Composer. We'll also see what's new in the GA release. Feng will provide an awesome demo. We'll also look at some DAG examples of advanced concepts. And then from there, next steps and roadmap and where to find out more. So what is Cloud Composer? As a starting point, let's understand the fit for Cloud Composer by looking at the state of the industry for a moment. There's a lot of data today. I think we can all agree about that. But how much data exactly? Well, IDC estimates 163 zettabytes of data. That's 163 billion terabytes will exist by 2025. That's a lot, right, Feng?
Yeah.
Yeah. So organizations are heavily investing in public cloud and currently are planning to adopt public cloud strategies, but at the same time, they're going to continue with some of their on-premises investments as well. So it's very clear that a hybrid cloud strategy is necessary in this environment. With the need for a hybrid strategy, and before Cloud Composer, there are a few ways of managing workflows across systems or even on the Google Cloud platform. And I think it's fair to say these were not the best at all.
No, not at all. I wrote one of those stacks. It's a pain.
Yeah,
I mean, workflow solution.
Yeah, exactly. Even just creating and scheduling cron jobs and managing those, or even going to the other end of the spectrum of creating your own orchestration engine, it's just a lot of work with a high cost of ownership.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So the Cloud Composer team rightly thought it should be easy to create, schedule, and monitor robust, portable workflows that work inside and outside of Google Cloud Platform for a holistic workflow lifecycle. So all these items highlighted in blue are key and critical for workflow. It's more than schedule and just let it run, or any one of these items. It's all of them together. So we're aiming to provide organizations a solution that covers them all. And that's where Cloud Composer fits, which was just made generally available. Nice work, Feng and team.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so it's just made available inside of Google Cloud Platform. And the short version of Cloud Composer is that it's managed Apache Airflow. So why Cloud Composer? End-to-end GCP integration. Orchestrate your full pipeline through Cloud Composer. And we want to make sure that we supported those hybrid and multi-cloud environments that we're seeing in the marketplace, where these things are just important to everyone. We also want it to be very easy, not have to wrangle with lots of code, be able to leverage Python to be able to orchestrate these workflows and not have to write a lot of that code that's necessary. But also keep it open source. We want people to contribute and be part of the larger community.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So a common question is, well, what's the difference between Airflow managed and running it on some VMs? Well, what the team has done is they've created a seamless and integrated experience with GCP. So it's not standalone and does not feel like a standalone product. Security, IAM, audit logging, all those things are baked in, so it acts and feels like an actual cloud product. It's also easy to use when things go as not expected within your workflows. And so Stackdriver is integrated for that exact reason. And we make it easy to manage the deployment with setting environment variables and maintaining your Python packages. Some of you might not be familiar with Airflow, or may have just heard of it. So we're really excited about it, and we want you to see why it's so exciting. So Airflow is currently incubating as an Apache Software Foundation project. It's actually been around for a few years. It's a leading open source package to create and schedule workflows. So all the workflows in it are code with Python, and they're highly approachable, and you can do a lot with it, including some programmatic workflows. We'll actually look through some quick, simple examples, and you'll see how easy it is to work with the code in Python for Airflow. So the strengths of Airflow in the open source community, we wanted to bring those together with the strengths of Google Cloud Platform. As you can see on the right-hand side, Google Cloud Platform, we're great at running infrastructure, creating services, adding layers of security, auditability, and containing costs. But there's no workflow and orchestration solution. Airflow, on the other hand, has really strong workflow orchestration and connectors inside of outside of GCP, description language, defined APIs, and so on. So we wanted to bring them together. But also we wanted to contribute back to the community. And a great example of that is the Kubernetes pod operator, which we'll cover later on in the demo. So within Airflow, the key concepts, all workflows are graphs. Series of tasks, and a task can fit into a graph. It could be as simple as a bash script to tell the time. Of course, they get plenty more complicated from there. Graphs can have a series of tasks, and tasks are basically a step. For example, maybe I want to run a SQL query or a BigQuery query and export that to Google Cloud Storage. There's also the concept of a sensor, a Boolean check on a step that waits until something has completed. When true, it proceeds. So we can orchestrate our workflows very seamlessly using these Airflow concepts. With the DAG views inside of Airflow, it makes it very easy to understand your workflow and its properties, including any bottlenecks or errors. And really what this allows you to do is chart a path to higher reliability of your orchestration workflows. So in terms of additional Airflow functionality, connections. There's all sorts of different connections from Airflow into other systems. We talked a lot about logging and being able to see what's going on within Airflow, but also SLAs, whether or not you're actually meeting those or not. There's also the capability of passing values between tasks. So lots of interesting and advanced functionality. And usually there's some questions of, can Airflow do X? And usually the answer is yes.
Yeah. Although it may often means that you may need to, either there are existing operators, if don't, often you have to sort of try to come out with your own solution. That tends to be hard, but it's still possible.
Yeah. So very flexible platform.
Yep.
Yeah. In terms of Google Cloud Platform, there's a core set of Airflow support built in. So data flow connectors, BigQuery, cloud storage, to name a few. And support is actually expanding with each Airflow release. And this is happening within the Airflow team, but also within the Google Cloud team. So what about support outside of GCP? Really important. So for example, I can run bash commands. I can call other public clouds. I can connect into Jira or even Slack, for example, to send notifications and interact with those tools. And there's so many more under development. So much support for non-Google things, fully usable within Airflow and thus Cloud Composer as well. So in terms of some of the new Cloud Composer features, it's been made available in a few new regions. Stack driver logging has been very much expanded, which we'll see within the demo. Yep. There's also been the inclusion of additional IAM roles, and then additional future additions in Airflow. The Kubernetes pod operator brought in Parquet source format, and also location selection for cloud data flow jobs. So more and more functionality being added in with Cloud Composer, and I think you can see that with this GA release.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does using Cloud Composer look like? So you create a Cloud Composer environment within a project. Each environment is a managed deployment of Apache Airflow, so you don't have to worry about the installation and some other typical administrative tasks.
Exactly. That's why we created a Cloud Composer to start with.
Definitely, yeah. Right? That takes a little bit of uplift, right, Feng?
Yeah.
Yeah. And projects can contain more than one environment. And so these integrate with multiple different services, cloud storage to manage your workflows, stack driver to understand what's happening within the environment. And then, of course, we're securing the environment with IAM, which we'll explain in a moment. So functionality-wise, these different methods of accessing Cloud Composer are all the same. One of the things that's interesting to point out, though, is with the SDK, we've actually made it convenient to manage Composer and Airflow both from the same command line tool. So with gcloud, having that installed, I can then run my Airflow commands against my environment.
Exactly. Isn't that cool?
That's awesome. That's awesome that you guys were able to pull that together. You have the tunnel and the commands just flow right through.
Right.
And you can manage everything in the same place. Super easy. So when we look at the architecture, it's really a collection of GCP resources. So you'll notice off the bat that there's two projects. There's a customer project, and then there's the tenant project. The former is visible. The customer project, you see that running within your cloud console. The tenant project is actually managed by GCP. So that was a design decision made because of Airflow's microservice feel. Do you want to comment on that really quick, Feng?
Oh yeah. So there are Airflow construct a service made up of a few components. They have a web server, they have scheduler, they have worker. Sort of different microservice component needs to run, it better fits into different GCP services. For example, like with web server, naturally it kind of fit into the GAE domain, right? Likewise, for scheduler and worker, sometimes those need to communicate. You need to have the right, it's good that we can fit those into a GCP service that provides communication from ground up. And Kubernetes, Google Kubernetes clusters will be a good place to host some of those Airflow resources.
Absolutely, and being able to scale up and scale down
Exactly.
is necessary.
Right.
One of the other things I like about the design too is that when we look at the Airflow database, that was obscured away in a tenant project, so it could be secured down, because when we think about connections to other systems, we don't want those connection details to get out. We want those locked down and secured away, and by keeping it away in the tenant project, that's taken care of, basically.
Right. So we really try to restrict the access to your Airflow metadata database, because it contains a lot of connection credentials. But at the same time, I realize that sometimes you do need to get database access. That is entirely possible by dialing in from the Kubernetes engine that you use to run your Airflow deployment.
Right. Exactly. And one of the things I also think that's really cool is that when you think about the things that are inside the tenant project, those are things that don't necessarily need to be touched, right? They can just operate and run, and that's all well and good from a customer perspective.
That's right, yeah.
And the other thing I like too is that in terms of locking down the access to the Airflow web server, you leverage the identity-aware proxy, so that a user can just sign in using their IAM credentials and gain access that way. They don't have to actually do some sort of proxy tunneling or anything like that.
True, yeah. That's the reason why we decided to put this in a tenant project and also put it behind an IAP, so that it's always accessible to you without all the proxying set up. One more thing I want to mention is that the reason why we put things in tenant projects so that we can hide all the IAP details from customers. You don't have to learn IAP in order to use Cloud Composer. Everything's been managed for you.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. And then, of course, when it comes to leveraging DAGs, which are basically your workflows and logs and plugins, that's all done through cloud storage. And then, of course, logging goes into Stackdriver, and we'll see that.
Deploying a DAG is super easy. Just copy a file to GCS. That's all you need to do.
Yeah, it's so easy moving files to GCS, so no problems there. So let's see what an actual workflow looks like at a very high level. It's basically a collection of tasks with interdependencies and relationships. So basically, tasks associated with workflows, dependencies, wait until the data is available in GCS, for example, and then start my BigQuery job. Or trigger something, right? That file is actually available within HDFS. Let's copy it into GCS from there. So these are really the building blocks of workflows in Airflow. And then, of course, maybe when my job completes, then I want to notify my users on Slack so they know that the most up-to-date data and information is available to them.
Yeah.
So Airflow DAGs are effectively Python files with 5 main sections, and we'll cover each of those in turn. So import, right? Step 1, import. From the Airflow system, a DAG, or a directed acyclic graph, is basically another way of saying workflow. So we import the operators to be used in the workflow. For example, the BigQuery operator you can see there on the 4th line. And then from there, we can trigger rules to specify the inter-task relationships. Then the arguments are defined. So we might have some default DAG arguments, and that's a convenient thing for Airflow. But if there's common arguments that you want to leverage, instead of specifying those for each Airflow task, you actually specify those at the beginning of your workflow, and then pass them in automatically via the Airflow DAG model. I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saves a lot of boilerplate code in your workflow. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, and lots of flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of setup, you basically give it a name, so in this case, demo DAG, a schedule interval, and also default arguments. Very simple, straightforward, easy to understand. And then we define the tasks. So here you can see that we have a BigQuery operator and also a BigQuery to GCS operator. So within the BigQuery operator, we're running a BigQuery query that will export the results to a new data set. And you can see we're specifying the name of the table within BigQuery. But then we also have the BigQuery to Cloud Storage operator, which is exporting that new data set to cloud storage. Once again, easy integration, very simple and easy to understand.
Plus, the code is not hard to read.
Oh, no. Absolutely not. Yeah, this is simple and straightforward stuff, and that's the purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of ordering, the tasks can be ordered based on completion dependencies. One thing must finish before the other. For example, my Airflow commits query, the query that runs, that creates my data set, must finish before I want to export that data to GCS. Makes sense. It's that easy. So at this point, we're going to switch to the demo. Feng is going to present that for us. So take it away, Feng.
Thanks, Tom. So far we have been talking about all the nice thing about Cloud Composer. Now let's see how we put everything in action. We mentioned that, to get things started, the first thing you probably want to do is there are a few places we mentioned about Cloud Console, we mentioned about Cloud SDK. Here we'll use Cloud Console as a way to demonstrate how to play with Cloud Composer. Similar functionality can be achieved using Cloud SDK. Most of the case, what you want to do is just go, once you are in the Cloud Composer page in Cloud Console, say you want to create a Composer environment. Click the create, and that leads you to the create page. Here you can specify your name, say, hey, demo, and then you can specify all the arguments or all the properties of that environment. I'm going to walk you through some of the configuration options that you may have. You can obviously specify the region where you want to create your Composer environment. You could also specify things like a machine type, number of nodes, auth scope, and also I want to highlight one thing. For beta isolation and protection, we also allow you to specify service account you use to run the Composer environment. So you don't have to use the sort of generic default computer engine service account. You can use any service account at your choice.
Very cool.
Yeah, scroll down a little bit. There are sections about some Airflow configuration properties. Airflow itself comes with a long list of configurations.
How many would you say there are if you had to guess?
I think it's probably 100 plus configuration options, but you are not going to use all of those. Say some common ones, say if you want to decide how soon you want to reload your DAG file. That's probably something you care because every time you make a change, you want Airflow to pick up that change quickly. So that's something you can config. Moving down, we also have environment variables. Those are the ones, if you want to send an email, right now, Composer comes together with SendGrid email support.
Oh, nice.
So you would config a Composer environment by just adding 2 environment variables, like SendGrid mail from and SendGrid API key. Those
simple.
will get you set up with email capabilities.
Excellent.
Labels, if you want to basically conveniently navigate through Composer environments and even across other GCP resources, you can always use labels, attached to environments to do filtering on those labels. You will be able to get your environment. I'm probably going to skip the part of creating a Composer environment. Reason because it may take 10 plus minutes, not because the reason is we need to create an app engine, and it takes a while for the app engine to get ready. So let's assume that you already have the environment ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So let's go back. So we have a Composer demo environment created beforehand. Once you have the environment ready, you can go in and inspect the various properties of that environment. Here you get the overview, like how many number of nodes, service accounts, auth scope, and you also get to see that two important things here. One is the hosted Airflow web UI. The second thing is the GSS packet. The Airflow web UI allows you to inspect workflows. And then the GSS packet is really for you to upload and make changes to your DAG files.
Makes sense.
So now let's go and take a look at a web server, hosted web server.
Yeah, let's see it in action.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, the web server is hosted in GAE protected by IAP. If you first log into this page, it will ask you for your Google credentials to log in. It can be your Gmail account, or it can be, you can also have programmatic access to the web server by using service account. Both ways are possible. And then once you are in the Airflow web UI, you could start to inspect the various workflows you have submitted. For example, like earlier we have Tom walks you through the Bcode demo. So we can inspect and check a few details of that. You have a few tasks. Those tasks are chained in some other, not very fancy. I understand it's like really like a linear chain of tasks, but you can create as complicated workflows as you want. So for the demo, this is really try to connect you back to the example you have just seen, right? You have, you create a data set, you run BQ query, and then you export the data to GSS.
Yeah, I've definitely seen customers who are running Airflow where their diagrams or their graph views easily take up the whole screen.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
this is of course a very simplistic example, but it shows the idea of what's possible within Airflow.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there are various views of that DAG or workflow. There's the graph view, you got a tree view, and then personally I myself also find the, let's say that's a Gantt chart view. Oh, sorry, this one shows the timeline. This is the Gantt chart view. This allows you to put all your task completion in a single place. You will be able to say, hey, when a task gets started, where you spend most time on a specific task.
So this is really helpful because then we can basically look at everything in one place and understand where the bottlenecks are.
Exactly, yeah. Then you can decide, from that point, how should you optimize your workflow pipeline?
Got it.
Yeah. Let's go back and then go to the home page and say, let's actually start a workflow run. Here you can easily trigger a workflow run from the Airflow web page. Once our workflow run is created, you see the workflow runs, the status, you have a one run says running, and then unfortunately you probably have to refresh the page from time to time so that you can see tasks being moved from various stages.
Got it.
So here we have seen that we have a task that's right now in running state. It's probably done processing. But you can go back to inspect, there's another one. If you go to the graph view, you can see the various state of the task. And sometimes if you're curious to understand the logs that's produced by the task, you can always go inspect here.
And that's a common request too.
That's a common request,
A lot of users want to be able to see the logs and see what's going on, especially from Airflow when it's touching so many different systems.
Exactly. And then often, sometimes when you have task failures, that's probably the logs become most useful. So we understand sometimes a failure may come out from, a fault may not necessarily happen within Airflow. Think about it, you have a process crash, you have a container restart. Those events are not uncommon in Kubernetes. We provide stack driver logs so that your logs are always kept somewhere, even for the logs that happen outside Airflow.
Very cool. Very helpful for debugging and seeing what's actually going on.
Right, yeah. So if you go to our Stack Driver login page, we actually have a dedicated Cloud Composer stop there. You can navigate there, try to figure out like which environment, which region, and which environment you have your Airflow environment created. You can select those environments, and then once you have selected environment, you will be able to see all the logs pertaining to your environment. We try to pre-classify those logs into a few categories. We have Airflow schedule logs, worker logs, that helps you to better manage your logs. One more thing we have added to the Airflow worker logs is we do allow you to filter logs by DAG ID, task ID, and execution date. It will quickly help you to navigate to the specific task you're looking for.
And then you can really narrow your way through the logs as opposed to looking at everything.
Right. Otherwise, you're just seeing this continuous stream of logs, and worse that those log streams may mix from concurrent tasks.
Of course, because chances are you probably have multiple different DAGs, perhaps even sub-DAGs, which we'll get into. It can easily become quite complicated.
Exactly. Yeah.
But this removes all that complication.
Yeah. That's how we saw that how we could Stackdriver logging useful for you for debugging Airflow DAGs.
Awesome.
Yeah. Moving back, we noticed that the BQ demo workflow has completed successfully. You see that.
Yeah, it's not showing that it was running anymore in that second slot there.
And there's no alerting right circle or right sign or orange anywhere in the
Always
console.
good when you run something there's no red.
Right. Yeah. The other thing I also want to highlight here is in our GA release, Cloud Composer starts to support Kubernetes Pod Operator. What that gives to you is the flexibility for you to start and run any container within Cloud Composer. You are not, and we, for example, in the past, Tom, you probably also got a lot of similar questions. Like people ask, hey, I have this dependency that is not really PyPy dependency. How should I, install and import that dependency into Composer?
Right. Yeah, that's a common question. How to configure, customize, add in some custom code, et cetera.
Right. Now, as things become so easy, anything you need to do that Composer doesn't provide you out of the box, just go and create a container and then bring that container to workflow, to Composer. Here
nice.
I have a very kind of simple container task. Let's go just by inspect the code a little bit. Scroll down. Look here, we have Kubernetes Pod Operator, and then the image we run is a very simple, basically compute Pi.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yes, but the nice thing is, I hope the things that demos here is really you can launch a container, and then the container image can be anything.
That's amazing for extensibility.
Right.
Yeah.
And I actually have some good news to share towards the end of the session.
Ooh,
yeah, more things you can do with playing with containers in Cloud Composer.
Oh, I'm excited.
I'm going to hold that for a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah.
I'm in suspense.
So let's go back, and then again, let's just do the same thing. Let's just trigger a DAG run. Just wait to see everything in action.
So we can see it's running in that second slot there. I see the bright green circle.
Yeah, it'll do a bunch of refresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see the task gradually move from running to execution to completion. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then similarly, I want to let everyone know that you can also inspect container logs. Sometimes you want to see task logs, of course, but then you may also want to inspect the container logs. That might be useful for you to debug what's happening in your container task.
Nice.
Yeah. Now we go, the first task is done. Now we're moving to the container task. Just give 10, 15 seconds. I think it should end. We're doing...
Back. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Yeah, let's just do
control. Thank you.
There we go.
You can tell I don't use
team demo.
Team demo, and you can tell I don't use Pixel a lot.
That's okay. That's okay.
All right. So the task is running. We can inspect the log. There's one more thing I want to highlight here, which is a perfect from this example. Sometimes there might be some delay from Airflow when they try to collect logs and display log in the web UI, because you try to do things in Apache to save a lot of read-write cost. But then with Stackdriver, you got logs in real time, so you don't have to wait always until. Imagine that you have a task that may take hours to complete.
Sure.
And then in the middle, you don't want to just wait hours to be able to see the logs.
Oh no, you want to see the logs right away. You want to know what's going on.
Right, yeah, that's how Stackdriver could come in and help so that you can inspect logs in real time.
Awesome.
Yeah. Again, let's just give you some time for you to finish.
Yeah.
While we're waiting for the demo to complete, the other thing I also want to mention, things are very useful on the Airflow Web UI is it also gives you a place for you to do re-trigger DAGs, but also sometimes a common issue people run into is that what if your DAG ran to an error state and you want to recover from that error state? Things you can do here is it's a bit manual, but it's still better for you to rerun the entire pipeline. What you can do is by delete or clear the failed task, and after that, you set your workflow status from failed to running. And then after the workflow status change to running, Airflow scheduler will be able to pick up and then reschedule the previous failed task.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you can pick up right from exactly where the DAG left off, effectively.
Right, yeah.
Nice.
We're also trying to see how we can better automate this instead of you always have to perform these multi-step actions yourself. But at least there's a way for you to do that right now in Airflow.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, let's see how it's doing.
There we
look
go.
at that.
Look at the very end. This computes the value of pi.
I was going to say, that looks like pi.
Yeah, that is pi.
There we go.
Cool.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's pretty much about the demo session. So coming back, I do want to quickly recap what I have discussed what we have discussed in the demo. We have created a composer environment, walks you through the various configuration options. We have also shown you how you could inspect your workflows in Airflow Web UI, and then some of the common tasks you could perform using Airflow Web UI, like triggering a DAG run, inspecting log details, and then sometimes if you needed to get a little bit more debugging visibility, Stackdriver is where you can get those information.
Yeah, I can definitely see how through this demo, we are definitely taking care of and meeting a lot of those challenges that we talked about earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So earlier we mentioned that the way how Airflow express DAGs is really code. So with code, it opens up a lot of possibilities for you to do more funny stuff here. One thing is you could template. In many cases, hey, my workflow remains 99% unchanged. I only need to touch this single parameter with each invocation of my diagram. So that's what's supported in Airflow with templating. Just put whatever parameter you need to templarize encapsulate into a Ginger template, and then you can always instantiate that at a diagram time.
Awesome.
Yeah. Likewise, if your DAG is complicated, think about it. You have 500. You mentioned that you have seen some DAG example with like a few hundred tasks.
At least.
I would imagine it's so tedious and probably also error-prone for you to specify those DAGs or tasks one by one yourself.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Here's another way. You can use programmatic DAG generation where everything's been done in a program. That's also one of the motivation behind why we want to use programming languages to define and create DAGs.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, if I had to run 1,000 tasks of the same type, that would just be so tedious. And with few lines of code, we're able to do that.
Right, yeah. And then the last thing is, when your DAG size grows big, you want modularities, you want to be able to create subcomponents. Airflow has this concept called subDAG that conveniently allows you to package a few related tasks into a single subDAG. And those single subDAG will be treated as if they are single tasks in the master DAG.
That's awesome for reusability.
Reusability, and also help you to organize your task in a hierarchical manner.
Yeah.
Cool. So those are all the nice things you could do using Airflow, using Composer, using its programming model to define the workflows. Some of the common questions we have seen from our customers. Can I install PyPy packages? We have just discussed that. In fact, offer more than that. You could install, you can bring any containers into a Composer where you can encapsulate your dependencies there.
And something that's interesting, right, is when you do that, when you place your custom packages and custom code inside that DAG folder, we actually recognize that it's not actually a DAG. It doesn't have those beginning DAG statements that we talked about earlier, so we don't actually Airflow doesn't pick it up as a DAG.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Environment be auto-updated, auto-upgraded on our roadmap, not supported right now, but that's something we're working very hard on.
Yeah.
Will Composer be offering more regions? Absolutely, yes. That's our roadmap to expand Composer to possibly 1 or 2 more regions by the end of the year.
And I think GA is a good example of that, right? Because with the GA release, it was then available in 2 more regions.
Right, yeah. Is that a graphic way to create DAGs? We hear you, yes. Absolutely.
Work in progress.
Yeah, working on in progress. We also want to make sure that, for the people who are not very comfortable with programming, although we mentioned that, Airflow DAG model is really simple, but still, if you prefer to use GUI for creating your DAGs, that's something we see a value and we're working on.
Definitely.
Can I choose which version of Python is using Composer? Yes, the support is going to be out soon. Well, you could specify whether you want to use Python 2 or Python 3.
Stay tuned for that one.
Exactly.
All right.
Cool. Some of those like a more sort of like a broader scheme or grand scheme of Composer where we are heading to, definitely want to see more close Kubernetes and Airflow integrations. As I mentioned, I want to save something at the end, so here are the good news.
Here we go.
Yeah. Soon we're going to make another release. In that release, we're going to allow you to create GKE clusters, delete GKE clusters, and also more importantly, you can launch a container in any GKE clusters as long as you have credentials.
That's awesome.
Think about that. We know like GKE just promoted this GKE on-prem, where if you could orchestrate and launch a container in a remote cluster that is hosted in your on-prem, eventually that gives you a convenient way for you to build hybrid orchestration in GCP.
And that definitely makes sense when there's definitely a number of customers out there who do want to continue to leverage their on-prem investments.
Exactly, yeah, we see that. So we think like, using GKE on-prem might be a good bridge to connect the two.
Definitely.
Yeah. We're also looking at adding more operators. This year we plan to add another 20 or 30 GCP service-related operators into
awesome.
Airflow. Yeah.
Very cool.
And resource usage. We definitely want to see more resource elasticity, ideally to the state where if you don't have any workflow executing, we should not, you don't have to pay anything. That would be our final goal.
That makes sense. Yeah. Obviously constrain the amount needed or consumed based on usage and based on needs.
Exactly, yeah.
Definitely. Definitely consistent with our managed services.
Right.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, how should I get started today? There are a few places you can get resources. Apache Airflow website has all the nice tutorials and information covering the basics and some of the examples there in their website. But also, we have a lot more examples, sample code, how to, and then also the ways how GCP connects with other GCP services in our Cloud Composer Cloud Doc website.
Cool.
Yeah. With that, that'll be
That's a wrap.
Yeah.
That's a wrap. So stay tuned for live Q&A, and we will be back with you in less than a minute. Okay, and we're back with some questions from the audience. So I think one of the first questions that's pretty interesting is, what should I consider when deciding whether to use Cloud Composer or Dataflow? And I think one of the key things there is to clarify that Cloud Composer is really more about orchestration and making things happen within various systems, whereas Dataflow is more for processing and ETLing both streaming and batch data, moving into some sort of data sync as necessary. But because of all those operators within Airflow and available within Cloud Composer, I can see it's very easy to say, well, gosh, couldn't I use Cloud Composer as an ETL tool? And that would probably not be the best way to proceed.
Right. The way I would also call this will be Composer will be a control flow orchestration system where Dataflow is more, obviously very data-centric, data processing focused.
Yeah, definitely. And so another question that we received is, what are some of the reasons why it would be difficult to run Airflow myself? And I should consider leveraging Cloud Composer instead. And I think my understanding is that when it comes time to install and run it and things like that, that can take a lot of effort.
Right, yes. Try to create a one manually yourself. You will see all the pains. Think about it. You also need to upgrade dependencies. Especially if you try to run Airflow in a distributed environment, every time you try to install a package, you have to make sure that it gets installed in all your instances or services.
Got it.
Yeah, and then think about how would you be able to consistently distribute your DAGs to all your Airflow instances.
Makes
Those
sense.
are really tricky and hard to manage by yourself problems.
Big challenges.
Right.
Big challenges. And how much effort do you actually want to put into making those things work is the question.
Yeah, we really want you to be able to say, hey, I want to use Airflow. 10 minutes after that, you can start using Airflow by writing your first DAG without worrying about, how should I install my Airflow on GCP or other cloud providers?
Makes sense. And another interesting one is there's a Kubernetes pod operator. That would work with Kubeflow, right, for running ML models and things like that?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, that was the GKE pod operator that also is the concern of resources. And you probably don't have to force to run your container in the same cluster where you run your Composer environment. You can launch your task in any GKE cluster. Presumably some of the ones you might already be using those to run Kubeflows.
Definitely. And something I think that's specifically interesting with Kubeflow is if you think of all the data engineering that goes into creating a machine, an ML model, Cloud Composer becomes a natural fit to orchestrate those tasks end to end.
Right.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
What other questions do we have? Can I kick off a DAG based on time of day or from a cloud function?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. From a day for sure, and from a cloud function, yes. That's one thing I want to say. Why we decide to host Airflow web server in this way. Hosting in GAE and also protecting it by IAP give you two things. One is that Airflow web URL is publicly accessible, but with the security protection in front.
Got it.
From cloud function. We have a tutorial on our Cloud Doc website that talks about how you can trigger a DAG execution whenever there's a GCS file change.
Nice.
So it works like, you have a GCS change, you trigger a GCF call, and that GCF call makes an HTTP post request to the Composer environment that starts the DAG execution.
Perfect. Maybe I have some data landing in GCS, and then I want to import that into BigQuery and then do something with it from there.
Right. Also, I just want to tie that with the templating things we have discussed. So with external like HTTP DAG triggering, you can also send along parameters or configuration values. Those will get instantiated together with each DAG run.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Really cool. And then really quickly, with the Kubernetes pod operator, is it possible to start up the cluster and then shut it down when the sensor recognizes that the task is complete?
Wow, that sounds a lot of work. I would say yes, you can do it, but then you have to really start a container that actually talk to GKE service.
Okay.
To save all that trouble for you, we have this GKE cluster operators that allows you to easily just create and delete or update GKE clusters from Cloud Composer.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you for joining us at Google Cloud On Air with new live webinars every Tuesday. We hope you have a great day, and we hope you enjoy working with Cloud Composer.